Good evening to all of you. Tonight the talk is on the appreciation of parents' love. You can also say gratitude to our parents. And there is a very appropriate word for this, which is filial piety. In Chinese we say hao shun. So in the Buddha's teachings, gratitude of our parents is a very important quality to cultivate. And for us to have gratitude to our parents, we must appreciate how much they have done for us. So most of us, we tend to forget how much our parents have done for us. And that is why ingratitude, not having gratitude, is very common. But to have gratitude, that is not common. The Buddha said to find grateful people in the world is very difficult. Most people in the world are ungrateful. Even our friends. Sometimes we have been very good to our friends. We have helped them. And later they forget about us. But our parents are much more important than our friends. That is why we have to remember to be grateful to our parents for all that they have done for us. And tonight I hope to share with you some of the memory of what our parents have done for us to bring up this sense of appreciation of our parents' love. We all know that before we were born, we were in our mother's womb for about 9 months. And even the Buddha says that our mother carried us in the womb as a heavy burden and with much anxiety for our well-being. Even before we were born, our mother was already worried for us, in the sense of she would worry that she does not take the wrong food that would be harmful for the baby. She would be worried that she does not overstrain herself so that the baby is not born, and in other ways. And then when we are in our mother's womb, all the food that our mother took, that should have gone into her own body, went into our body. Because when the baby is a fetus, it's like a tumor in your body, cancerous tumor. Whatever food you take, the tumor will absorb, and the tumor becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and grow. So in the same way, as a fetus, as a baby in the womb, whatever our mother took, food and the blood, everything went into us as a baby. And then later, after 9 months, the mother will give birth to the baby. And this is a very painful experience, in case some of you do not know. Many years ago, when one of my sisters gave birth to her first baby, and I went to the hospital with her husband, and then I was outside the delivery room. And when my sister gave birth, I could hear her screaming her head off in pain. Then later only I understood, childbirth is so painful. Sometimes we have a bowel movement. You want to shit, and the shit is having trouble coming out. And we have what we call stomach ache. The shit is not very big. But when it's trying to come out, you have you feel so great pain. Sometimes it's when it's difficult to come out. But you think about the baby. When the baby is about to be born, it's about 3.5 kilograms. 3.5 kilograms thing trying to come out of your womb is a terrible thing. Imagine if you had a shit, half a kilogram trying to come out, that would be terrible pain. But 3.5 kilograms is really terrible. So, especially the first birth, of a woman is a very, very painful experience. And that was what our mother experienced when we were born. And then after we were born, we gave our parents sleepless nights. Every night, crying as a baby. Babies tend to cry at night when they are hungry, when they wet their bed, when they have a stomach ache. So that was how much problem we gave our parents when we were a little baby. Then after that, we still gave them a lot of trouble by dirtying our nappies, our linen, or dirtying our trousers, and sometimes even shitting on the floor. And our mother especially had to mop up and clean clean us whenever we dirty ourselves. And then when we became sick, they also were sick with worry for us. I don't know about you, but when I was young, I used to get sick very often. And I remember whenever I get sick, my mother would be worried over me, give her sleepless nights. Sometimes when I was a young baby and I couldn't sleep at night and I cried, I remember my mother would carry me on her back and walk around the room, trying to get me to sleep. And then also when I was young, because I became sick many times, quite often, she had to spend a lot of money on me. And probably many of you also was like that. When we are young, we tend to get sick quite often. And it is a very heavy financial burden on our parents. Sometimes, like in my parents' case, they had to bring up 8 children, and I was the youngest. And they had just enough money to survive, just to manage. And sometimes when we get sick more often than we should, then it places a great strain on them. And as a child, as we grew up, sometimes we are very unreasonable. We want this and we want that. And it's not 1 day or 2 days, but day in and day out. We make a lot of demands on our parents. And sometimes we are fussy about the food. And sometimes we get angry and go into these anger tantrums. And sometimes our parents may beat us. But when they beat us, they don't get any pleasure out of it. They do it for our own good. So even that kind of beating, we should appreciate. Because if you look around, you find there are some people who are spoiled. Their parents never beat them. And they are spoiled to the extent that they grow up and become gangsters and become crooked people. Because their parents did not have the time or did not have the wisdom to teach them the correct way. And in spite of us giving our parents so much trouble, they never threw us out of the house. They were always patient with us. And before we were able to walk or to walk far, they carried us around. You see a lot of parents carrying their babies. Then as we grew older, they would drive us to school or from school, and sometimes they would drive us to this place or to that place because we want to enjoy ourselves. So whatever place they think we like to go, they would drive us. And then many times they comforted us, especially as children we cry so often. They would comfort us, buy us presents, teach us how to walk, to eat, to speak, to go to the toilet, to get dressed. and how to behave in public or in society. And then as we grew bigger, like in our teenage years, they tried to guide us and steer us from dangerous situations and acquaintances, friends. Because as young people, many of us, we don't know what is good and what is bad for us. Sometimes we mix with bad company. And because our parents know better than us, they always try to help us avoid bad company. But sometimes when we are young, we tend to be rebellious. And we think that our parents are unreasonable. And sometimes our friends take cigarettes, we also want to take cigarettes. Our friend take liquor, we also want to take liquor. But the end result of all this is actually very bad. But when you're young, you don't know. Many years ago, 1987, I came back from Thailand. I had spent 1986 in Thailand. So I came back to Malaysia. I was looking for a cave to stay. So I went around Ipoh, looking at many caves. And I found a dark cave behind Simpang Polai. And I stayed there for about 4 months. And because the cave was very lonely, about 1 mile from Simpang Polai village, sometimes these children will go and hide out there. And I used to see about 10-year-old kids. They go with their friends, they go hide there and smoke. And that's the beginning of these drug addicts. They will start by smoking cigarettes. And later their friends will ask them to smoke drugs. And if they don't want, their friend will tease them, coward. Sissy. And because your friends tease you, you want to show you are a macho, you are a hero. You also take all these things and you get into problems. And sometimes we see in the newspapers, teenage girls, because their mother or father gave them some scolding, they run away from the home. They don't know how much they make their parents worry. I personally know of one of my supporters. The daughter was about 15 or 16, and then because the parents scolded her a bit, she ran away from the home, and disappeared for a long time. And the father was worried sick. And in this kind of situation, if you go and ask the police to look, you won't be able to find. So what did he do? He went to look for some Thai Kor, asked the Thai Kor to make inquiries. So the Thai Kor asked some other Thai Kor, who asked some other Thai Kor. And from the state of Penang, finally located the daughter in Johor. So he went all the way to bring the daughter back. And when he went to get the daughter from this small town in Johor, the daughter was working in a unisex hair salon. And then the Thai Kor there told the father, he said, lucky you didn't contact the police. If you contacted the police, you'll never see your daughter again. So a lot of these young people, they don't realize. You get into the clutches of these Thai Kor, they do with you as they like. And if you try to be funny, they can just kill you and throw you somewhere and nobody will ever see you again. So after that experience, I suppose that girl never ran away from home again. And for people like you, your parents have been very good in giving you a higher education. And some of you, I think, parents had to slog very hard to finance your higher education. And the Buddha said that our parents were our first teachers. Our parents, when we were young, a lot of things we didn't know. And our parents taught us so many things. Sometimes we have forgotten. They have found that there were some children who have been found in the wild. Sometimes one, for some reason or other, they were lost in the wilds and brought up by wolves. And such children who were brought up by wolves, they behave like wolves, They didn't behave like human beings. So it does not mean that just because you are born as a human being, that you will behave like a human being. You have to be taught to behave like a human being. So that's what our parents have done for us. They taught us to behave as a proper human being. And the dedication, the commitment of our parents, and all the love and all the care to make our life as good and as happy as possible. They went to great lengths to care for our welfare and our happiness. And one day, when many of you become a parent yourself, either a mother or a father, and then you will realize how much trouble and how much love you give to your child. And when you realize how great your love for your child is, then you will realize how much your parents loved you when you were young, when you were little. When we are young, sometimes we magnify our parents' faults, Of course, our parents are not arahants, Our parents are not sammasambuddhas. They are not enlightened people. They don't have the wisdom of an arahant or a sammasambuddha. So they have a lot of shortcomings. They have a lot of faults. But so do we have a lot of faults, a lot of shortcomings. But when we are young, we tend to magnify our parents' faults. And one day, when you yourself become a parent, then you will realize how much love you give your child. And then you remember how much love your parents gave you. Then whatever fault they had, all becomes unimportant. All their faults are unimportant because they had given you so much love. But if you are lucky to come from a poor family, you tend to appreciate your parents more. Why? Because like me, you could say I come from a poor family because there were 8 children and my father was only a clerk and my mother was not working. So my father's salary had to stretch to cover 10 people, the parents and the 8 children. So we didn't have a very easy life. I remember when I was young, I used to wear some of my shirt broken. And then later, my elder sister, many years later, my elder sister told me, one day, some people went to the neighbor's house to play mahjong. And then these neighbor's friends, they saw me, small boy in broken shirt. Then they passed a comment, who is this beggar's son? So when my sister heard that remark, my eldest sister, she felt very hurt. And later when she started working, she gave the first month she took her salary, most of the money she gave my mother. But the balance she kept for herself a little. She used that to buy a shirt for me because she remembered that people made this kind of remark. So because under poor circumstances, you find that everybody in the family has to work harder to survive. And because you see your mother working so hard, you see your father working so hard, then you appreciate them more. But people who come from middle-class families, they are better off. They don't see their parents working so hard. Maybe their parents work in aircon rooms, aircon office, but it doesn't mean that they don't work so hard. They might not physically work so hard, but they still have a lot of mental problems. And later, as you start working, then you will find that when you work, the Chinese saying, you have to look at your boss face. If the boss is not happy with you, put on a sour face or something, then you have to be careful. Yes or not? So, even if your parents work in aircon room, they also have a lot of problems. So if you come from a middle class family, just because you don't see your parents working so hard and suffer so much, does not really mean that they don't suffer for you. I will give you some quotes from the Buddha. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said, Brahma, monks, is a term for mother and father. Brahma in the Hindu tradition or in India, Brahma means God. So here the Buddha is saying, God, monks, is a term for mother and father. Ancient teachers, monks, is a term for mother and father. Worthy of offerings, monks, is a term for mother and father. Why so? Because mother and father do much for their children. They bring them up, nourish them, and introduce them to the world. So here the Buddha is saying that our mother and father should be considered on par, on equal terms with God Himself. In other words, we should venerate, we should pay respect to our mother and father like God. And he also calls them ancient teachers because ever since we were born, they were our first teachers. And so they are worthy of offerings. Now, you will notice here the Buddha says mother and father. Mata pitu in Pali. Actually, you know how Bahasa Malaysia, a lot of our words in Bahasa Malaysia, about 1/3 comes from Sanskrit. Bhumi, Putra, Putri, Muka, Sabda, all these are Rupa, all these are Sanskrit terms. And Pali is very similar. So mother and father is Mata Pitu. Mata, from there you get mother. In fact, some of the Indian words are very ancient. So they have even gone into English, like dua, D-U-A, or due, D-W-E, or duo, D-U-O. You get the English word duo, D-U-O. That comes from India. Or dual, D-U-A-L. That comes from India. And center, the English word center, C-E-N-T-R-E. Very probably, when it was first coined, it was not center, it was kentra. And the equivalent Indian word is kentra. So even English words, some of them come from India. So Mata Pitu, mother is always stated first. Because in the Indian tradition, mother is more important than father. So in the Chinese tradition, we always talk about father first. Yes or not? Father and then mother. But in India, they were wiser. We owe more to our mother than to our father. Because we all know that our mother took more care to bring us up, took much more trouble to bring us up. In a Buddhist country like Thailand, because of these Buddha's teachings, they actually venerate mother and father. In Thailand, they are taught, children are taught to bow to mother and father, to bow to monks, to bow to teachers. And if some of you are observant, you look at Malays, they also have great respect for their mother and father. Actually, Chinese, we used to have this kind of respect. But now we have forgotten about it. And the Confucian teachings and all that, we have a lot of respect for mother and father. Nowadays, people have forgotten. We see a lot of Hong Kong movies that affects many of us. So, when I first came into Buddhism, I came to Buddhism in my late 20s. And when I studied the Buddha's teachings, before I came to the Buddha's teachings, I had an interest to study other religions. I studied the Bible, I studied the Quran, I studied the Bhagavad Gita, Hindu books. I studied the, what we call Bengali books, Sikh books. I studied the Baha'i. Taoism, Tao Te Ching and all that. Then when I came to Buddhism, I realized that the Buddha's teachings was very profound and very meaningful. And I also noticed that one of the important things in Buddhism is the great respect we should show to our mother and father. So at the age of around 30, after I come into Buddhism, I decided that I was going to show this respect to my mother and father. So on Chinese New Year Day, got up early in the morning, then I said Happy New Year to my parents. Then I bowed to them, bowed to the floor to my mother and father. And then they had never seen me do this before, and they were so touched that their eyes became wet. So after that, I tried to bow to them every Chinese New Year and on their birthday. So it is something that you all can learn. Since it comes from the Buddha itself, it is a way of repaying your parents' kindness. And if you do this, they'll be so surprised that they appreciate you much more. Now, in another sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said, the unworthy person is ungrateful and forgetful of benefits received. But the worthy person is grateful and remembers benefits received. So, people who are no good, unworthy people, they have no gratitude. But a good person, person with totek, Tao-te, he is a grateful person. And the Buddha said, it is very difficult to repay our parents' kindness. The Buddha said that even if you were to carry your mother on one shoulder and carry your father on the other shoulder, and every day take care of them and bathe them and feed them and massage them, and even if they were to shit on you, and you took care of them, carried them like this every day for 100 years, still you cannot repay your parents' kindness. Because when we were young and we were in real need, they took care of us. When we are young and helpless, that is the time when we really need somebody to take care of us. Imagine if we were left and our parents did not take care of us, we would not be able to survive. We would not be alive today. So many times when we were sick, and if our parents did not take good care of us, we would have passed away many, many times. But at that time, they took care of us. Sometimes when you need your friend's help and your friend comes to your assistance, that is a real friend. But when you don't need your friend's help, the fellow comes along, then you don't appreciate him so much. It's only when you really need somebody's help and he helps you that you really appreciate. So our parents have done that for us when we really needed help. That's why the Buddha said it's very difficult to repay our parents' kindness. But the Buddha said, if you want to repay your parents' kindness, teach them 4 things. These 4 things are quite important. The first one is to have faith in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, San Pao, to have faith in the triple gem. The second is if they do not have sila, they don't know how to keep morality, precepts, that means they maybe kill a chicken for you, or kill a duck for you, or they break the precepts in some other way. But you teach them to keep the 5 precepts, Panchasila, that is another way you repay your parents' kindness. The third one, if your parents are very selfish, they don't like to do charity, they are not generous, then you teach them to be generous, to like to posi, to help other people. That is another way you repay your parents' kindness. The fourth one is if they do not have wisdom, then you encourage them to listen to the Dhamma or you teach them the Dhamma, or you get tapes on the Dhamma for them to listen, so that they have wisdom. That is another way you repay your parents' kindness. So, these 4 things. The first one, faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Second one, morality, chia. Third one, generosity. The fourth one, wisdom. Why are these 4 things important? Because if your parents practice these 4 things, they would have a good rebirth. Either they go to heaven, or at least they come back as a human being. If somebody does not keep the precepts, or somebody is not generous, very selfish, or have no wisdom, then it's very likely that person will be reborn as a ghost, or as an animal, or even go to hell. So here you are helping your parents to have a good rebirth by teaching them these 4 things: faith, morality, generosity, and wisdom. And then if they cultivate these 4 things well, they may even become an Arya, Seng Ren, Seng Jin, and they are on their way out of samsara, out of this Fu Hoi, this Ko Hai. These 4 conditions are also mentioned in some other sutta. The Buddha said, if you love somebody and you want to be reborn with that person in the next life, these 4 things should be similar. First one, your faith, that means your religion. Second one, whether you are equally moral or equally immoral. Third one, generosity, either you are equally generous or equally selfish. The fourth one, either you are equally wise or equally bodoh, stupid. Then you'll be reborn together. So remember, if you want those that you love to be reborn with you, these 4 things. Now, in one of the Buddha's discourses, the Buddha said, of all the heavy karma, there are 5 types of karma. Karma is intentional action, which are the heaviest. That means the evil is very great for these 5 deeds. The first one is you kill an arahant. Kill an arahant. A arahant is a liberated being. Arahant also includes a Buddha. So if you kill an arahant, that is an extremely heavy offense. Second one, you kill your mother. Third one, you kill your father. The fourth one, you hurt a Buddha by making his blood flow. That means intentionally you harm a Buddha and make his blood flow out. The fifth one, the monks or nuns, community of monks or nuns are in harmony, and you create problem, you are batu api, you make them divide and split. So these 5 offenses are the most heavy offenses. And if you do any of these 5 heavy offenses, for sure, when you die, you will go to hell. Nobody can save you from going to hell. And you'll be there for a long time before you come up. So, you see how parents are so important, that if you kill your mother and father, that is an extremely heavy offense.